In the end, the Night Lord is defeated. The primordial Night Lord's rune can finally be returned to this member of the cutting-gifted tribe. But instead, the Ironeye cuts their throats. This man has it within him to be a monster, a traitor to his fellow Nightfarers who wanted nothing more than for the night to end. And the Ironeye gets what he desires most, to fight on against the night forever.
The night is far from over.
The end. Or is it? Do you remember what the priestess said to you when you first arrived at the round table?
You are awake. I know not why, but once again it has happened. So be it.
It's as if everything has been reset. New arrivals are brought up to speed and prepared to face the night as though for the first time. This isn't the first cycle. But so be it, she says. Her formless master expects them to try again. In my view, this sort of hard reset occurs when the Nightfarers experience a catastrophic failure. Indeed, we know of other Nightfarers who did fail spectacularly. They are versions of us, from other timelines.
These condemned valiantly faced down the night, but ultimately failed and surrendered to the darkness. They are, in fact, us. Worse still, they multiply through their marriage to the night, spreading from one world to the next. We must stop them before it's too late.
So, clearly, time is convoluted to the point that entire worlds and timelines can be lost, yet still persist, with their condemned invading other worlds that haven't yet been lost. It's never easy to explain the absurd logic of time travel, so I tend to take a simpler view on all of this. I think of Nightreign's universe as a great battle of wills across time and space, with grace on one hand and the night on the other. The Round Table Hold is likened to a ship floating upon the night, a bastion that clearly operates outside of time and space in the base game, and I think the same is true here in Nightreign as well. Such is the power of Marika and the Erd Tree, it seems. So, when the Ironeye cuts the throat of the cutting-gifted tribesman, this must surely classify as a failed timeline, right? Yet, while this Ironeye, this monster, fights on in the endless night he has created, I think his timeline is still connected to another where there is hope. Ours, a place where the Ironeye's story can begin anew. Chapter 1 of his remembrance recalls a letter sent from the Fellowship to the Ironeye. It reads, "Ironeye, beloved child of the Fellowship, we have received word from VaatiVidya that you have fulfilled your duty. Your compensation is on its way. Remain at your present location. A new, substantial task will soon be upon you, which will likely require journeying to the lands between. Details to follow. Ever your custodian, Isolde." According to later dialogue from the priestess, the Fellowship are a mercenary outfit, masters of assassination who have agents travel around the world, settling conflicts through clandestine acts. In this letter, the Ironeye is confirmed as having just felled a mark, with his payment for the task soon to follow. He learns this from Isolde, dubbed his custodian, his guardian, and, perhaps most notably, his master. From this relationship, we can note a clear power dynamic at play, one where the beloved child of the Fellowship is expected to kill at their custodian's command. Later in the questline, we open a letter and receive cracked sealing wax that was commonly used by sellswords of the Fellowship. It reads, "The stamp signifies an assassin's oath. Once a target is agreed upon, there is no going back. Such contracts are said to have their origin in the lands between." How fascinating to learn that the contracts of the Fellowship might have originated in the lands between. Perhaps the Fellowship's assassinations were even ordained by the Erd Tree itself, and there's actually quite a bit of evidence for this. For one, the relic that is the wax seal rewards its bearer with runes for critical hits, an assassination payment in gold, of all things. Then there's the fact that the contracts themselves are said to have originated in the Lands Between, designed to settle conflicts, which is the kind of thing you'd expect from the ruling order of the realm. There's also the fact that the assassins of the Fellowship are called scions. Scions is a horticultural term, so often used by the Golden Order. And of course, the Ironeye himself ultimately becomes a Nightfarer fighting on behalf of Grace, even if he would later stray from that purpose. But we'll get to that. At this early point in the questline, Isolde instructs the Ironeye to hunt down a threat to their Fellowship, one who was involved in the destruction of the boarding house in the Duskin Valley. This is what leads the Ironeye to the Round Table Hold, where he makes an ally of the priestess.
The traitor you're after. It seems I too am involved in all of this. One of those summoned to the Round Table is said to have abandoned their duties, or so the voice has intimated. I was thinking of telling the others, but then you arrived, as if you had appeared to help me pursue the matter. The traitors of the Round Table and the Fellowship appear to be one and the same. Let's you and I get to the bottom of this.
In this dialogue, the priestess reveals that it was the voice of her formless master that informed her of the traitor and his betrayal. Thus, she doesn't know the full story. She only knows that the traitor is a Nightfarer who was summoned to the Round Table only to abandon their duties.
The sad thing is, I think in other circumstances he might have joined us here. But in the end, he chose to be a monster.
Indeed, she then tasks us with eliminating a condemned, a former Nightfarer who valiantly faced down the night, but ultimately failed and surrendered to the darkness. It's not clear to me whether this Night Huntsman is the traitor themselves, or whether they're simply a messenger for them, but regardless, what's important is that they carry a letter, an invitation from the traitor, sealed with the stamp of an assassin's contract. The act of breaking the seal signifies an assassin's oath to hunt down the target marked within, and inside the envelope, the traitor marks himself, intent to welcome the assassin Ironeye at the Round Table Hold.
Well met, comrade. It pains me to see you like this, but yes, I am the traitor. You've come to hurry me to my end, haven't you? I've been waiting. Well, you'd best get on with it. Didn't quite manage it, did we? You should know as well as anyone, we can't be killed so easily. Find an edge of order, and I'll let you in on a little secret.
An edge of order. I know how you might find one. The beings, known as Night Centaurs, spill over with sacred power. Your search should begin with them.
And so we're tasked with seeking out an edge of order, a fragment imbued with holy essence, which can give a weapon a fleeting blessing, consistent with the fundamentalist arms and incantations found in the base game. With this, the Ironeye is able to bring a permanent end to the traitor.
I can feel it. I'm certain. This is the real thing. I'll tell you what you want to know. You and I, all of us, are already dead. But our curse does not allow us to rest. As those who live in death, we could not rest until the Night Lord was defeated. Battle was not suffering, but pleasure. Until you have undergone the same. You have the same eyes. What will you do? My heart, I finally feel it. It beat its last.
This is the major revelation at the heart of Ironeye's questline. We learn that the Ironeye is of those who live in death, an undead, born of the Great Schism where Godwyn perished in soul alone and spawned countless kin. While Nightreign's lore is largely self-contained, this is a rare instance that carries far-reaching implications. For previously, we never saw any proof that those who live in death could be rational, cultured beings. So, in Fear's ending, it was kind of natural to assume that everyone would just be skeleton. But Ironeye is more than just skeleton. He's talking skeleton. To put it simply, I probably shouldn't put that sentence in the book. Anyway, listen to the priestess's reaction to this information and note her subtle prejudice towards the living dead.
I'm surprised to learn the truth of your natures. However, we strive for the same purpose. I need nothing more.
I wonder, if they did not strive for the same purpose, would grace be so forgiving to those who live in death? Those who live in death may have boarding houses and a fellowship and a Duskin Valley to call their own, but I've no doubt that they're still discriminated against, even if they're more rational beings than we previously knew. Consider the name Duskin Valley. The word dusk echoes the ending of Elden Ring, where the undead are dubbed the Duskborn, so presumably this is a valley where the dead are segregated from the living. Such a thing reveals they are not accepted in wider society, and indeed the Duskin Valley is where those who live in death have a boarding house, a private refuge providing food and lodging. And even if they do manage to join the Fellowship as assassins, even then, the Chapter 6 remembrance notes that the scions of the Fellowship are fated to be disposed of once they play their part, as if these centipedal scions are permitted to exist as long as they remain useful. Incidentally, this willingness to dispose of the expendable scions is even more proof to me that the Fellowship is run by those loyal to the Erd Tree, for who else would have the fundamentalist weapons capable of disposing of those who live in death? Such is the bond between Master and Scion, a relationship where the Master is living and the Scion lives in death for as long as their custodian allows. Isolde is our only example of such a relationship, but luckily for the Ironeye, it seems like she's an outlier amongst her peers. A letter from her reveals a rebellious sentiment, a dream. The scions of the Fellowship are fated to be disposed of once they play their part. Thus I had a dream, to wrest the power of the night and bend the rules which govern our realm. The scions raised would wander through an endless night, fighting on and on. A night that would never break, for their sake, I desired. But it is a dream most foolish. I should never have mentioned it to you. Free yourself of your misgivings and walk the path in which you believe. Ever your custodian, Isolde. Isolde regrets sharing this dream, realizing she's overstepped, and we hear this as early as the first remembrance, where she reveals she only spoke hastily out of frustration, presumably frustrated with how the Fellowship was run. But it's too late to go back now. She has planted an idea in the Ironeye's head, incepting the notion that it might be possible for those in the Fellowship to escape control and fight in an endless night for their pleasure alone. So it is that the Ironeye slays the Night Lord and the last remaining member of the Cutting-gifted tribe, an act that might just have severed the only means of him ending the night. The final remembrance of the Ironeye, who has just become a monster, reads, Isolde, my custodian, you were the finest guardian one could hope for. I desired freedom from the yoke of the Fellowship only because you showed me it was possible. I have only gratitude for you, Master. For now, my night shall never end. But end it does, for despite the monster being of those who live in death, he was wrong about the night bringing endless pleasure. Do you recall this line of dialogue?
Battle was not suffering, but pleasure. Until
what? Until the night took root in him? Until the night won and eroded the world of his timeline entirely? It's left up to your speculation. But whatever happened in the monster's endless night, I believe it leads to the monster infiltrating an earlier timeline and going back to destroy the Duskin House of the Fellowship. In doing so, they ensure the Ironeye will be sent to kill them, and at their own hand, they find their end. An end that is ironically itself a part of an endless loop that goes on and on, assuming of course that the Ironeye continues to clench his dagger against the tribesman's throat every time. But perhaps the Ironeye still has a choice. He could always offer the Night Lord's rune instead. The Erd Tree might retain its control over the Fellowship and over those who live in death, and perhaps nothing would truly change, but at least his night would finally end. But that's not the only way to interpret this story. In fact, it's totally valid to argue that the Ironeye and the monster are two completely different people. Personally, however, I love the tragedy of the Ironeye being the monster, so since it's kind of up for interpretation, I'm going to go with the theory that I enjoy the most, and you're free to do the same. Such is the beauty of Elden Ring's lore. Much like the Ironeye, the Raider found great pleasure in battle, though his joy specifically came from triumph. He lived for the glory of defeating a worthy foe. The Raider's legend began long ago, when he faced off against the king of the Archipelago Forest. He grappled the hulking beast with his iron grip and flung him away, proving his strength. Then the king's broken claw was claimed, as a trophy and testament to his victory. Thus did the man become known as Black Claw. Afterwards, for a time, the Raider devoted himself to exploits on the high seas, seeing in his fellow pirates a shared love of a worthy rival. On his first voyage, the Raider vanquished countless foes, and when a ship's figurehead was dislodged from an exchange of blows, the Raider claimed it for himself, that it might later serve as a reminder of his glorious exploits. The seas were thus divided into east and west, with the Black Claw presiding in the eastern seas and the White Horn ruling over the west waters. Their fleets were destined to clash. Upon the shore did they contend for 7 days and 7 nights to see which was the stronger. While each fought bravely, a clear victor felt undeterminable. The Raider tired of this unending struggle, of the warfare that never seemed to determine a clear victor, and so the Raider shipped his iconic claw to his arch-nemesis directly, an invitation for the two to duel to the death, alone. It follows that this was the moment where, in return, he received the White Horn's signature helmet, a symbol of a challenge accepted. The Raider's Chapter 4 remembrance recalls his anticipation of the battle and introduces us to Weathervane, the Raider's first mate, who is excited at the prospect of watching two legends fight. The pair clumsily wash ashore at the meeting place, and Weathervane brazenly laughs as she starts scribbling notes about how a wave knocked the Raider over. To explain her notes, she says, "I've got front row seats to a duel to the death between two bloody beasts. Figured I could make a fortune if I got the details down." The Raider admired her spirit.
You remind me of Weathervane. I could see you reading the winds just as well. Oh, Weathervane was the navigator on my old sea vessel. Best apprentice a man could ask for. The kid read the winds like no other.
As the story goes, the Raider then sat on the shore where the great battle was to take place, peering to the west, where a sea had become engulfed by darkness. Weathervane then pleads with the Raider, stating, "Give this one up, Captain. he's part of the night now. It seems the impending calamity had taken the raider's most worthy foe from him, Whitehorn. Indeed, the entire Western Sea appeared to have been taken by the encroaching night. There's something about this scene that makes me wonder if they're standing currently in the lands between, a place between East and West, where we know Weathervane would meet their end. The dying words of the apprentice Weathervane can be found in Limveld, addressed to a former mate who she had moved on from serving. "Captain," she wrote, "I've found a wind that carries me farther, faster." Her grave is found amidst 3 Kaidan mercenaries, which leads me to speculate on the nature of her death. Did she meet her end in Limveld, taken with the night? Did she join up with these 3 mercenaries, which could be evidenced by how they defend the grave? Or did she die to these 3 Kaidan mercenaries who appear as hostile red phantoms? The raider does seem to imply that she went out fighting. Truth is, we don't know how she died, but she is dead.
Are you sure of this? Damned fool. Why not just tell me? The kid went out like a warrior. Not the bad way, all things considered. Thank you. I might never have known.
Weathervane's fascinations changed like the days of the week, to the chagrin of the single-minded crew. But not being one for regrets, the first mate was unperturbed by what others said. Going by the self-appointed title of Apprentice of a Great Pirate, Weathervane found that dreams could come true, even if they might take a lifetime. This is why she cherished the wind, which blew wildly, like her fascinations with one thing or the other, though it never led her astray.
You said you were on the fence. Well, my advice has changed. I say refuse the choice. Who says that when you choose one path, you forego the other? It's your journey. Take all the paths you like.
In the end, we read that the raider wished to try his hand against the Night Lord, the one who took away his chance at fighting a worthy rival. So it is that he arrives in Limveld, driven here by his intuition. Upon his arrival, like all the other Nightfarers, we have to imagine that his own backstory was soon forgotten. This means he would have forgotten that he was Black Claw, misled by the fact that he wears the Whitehorn's own helmet. Remember, he only wears the helmet because it was a token of their impending battle. It's this desire for battle that leads him to a monument, a stone that enables the worthy to enter the battles they most desire to face.
This monument stands testament to a series of proud battles. Long ago, sacred rituals were held in the name of Grin, god of war, to extol the virtue of the soul. Conquerors of neighboring seas were gathered to fight in contests of strength, each with the potential to discover a truly worthy opponent. As you can see, this stone records the history of what transpired. Oh, my stars. That was the starting signal. I can't believe it, but it seems you've been chosen to participate in a battle to prove your valor. The tourney of the lands between has begun.
The tourney of the lands between. Who could have expected that, here and now? I admit, I'm envious. I'll have to be content to cheer you on.
It's extremely curious that there is something called a tourney of the lands between. Such contests were common in the age of Godfrey, where they were held to honor the Erd Tree, but instead we're told these contests were held in the name of Grin, god of war. Who is Grin? A folklore god, perhaps? It's a very strange piece of lore to reconcile, as you wouldn't think another god would be honored when Marika was the goddess presiding over the lands between, and yet it must be canon to Elden Ring's world, since the tourneys take place before the shattering that led to Nightreign. I think perhaps Grin is a pagan god that existed in a time long past, that the Erdtree might have assimilated. That's my take, but I'd be curious to read your own interpretations down below. Anyway, eventually there comes a moment where the raider, believing himself to be White Horn, expects to face off against Black Claw, but he cannot.
Still not started. Maybe your opponent just doesn't like the look of you. Oh, cheer up. Just making a joke. This is taking forever.
But then, while walking upon the shore, the sea breeze reminds him of his memories of the coastal waters. Then he recalls he is Black Claw, and White Horn was the one taken by the knight. Now their fight can begin.
I'm sorry, brother.
Were you fighting sea monsters in your pirate days? I can see why history remembers you. Next is the grand finale. No room for doubt anymore. Make sure you come back the victor.
So, the curtain falls upon the tourney. I saw the beacon rise, just like the start. Now, as much as I'd love to tender my heartfelt congratulations, you should take a look at the monument yourself. Yes, I rather think you had better pay your respects. Allow me to help.
I suppose this puts an end to our contest. I'm giving these back, partner. Roam free.
Maybe now isn't the time, but well done. You've proved you are peerless in your strength. Might not have been a happy memory for you, but I'll never forget what you've achieved.
A gentle wind brushed the raider's cheek, and he wondered how Weathervane may have recorded their battle in words. The pirates of the coastal waters love nothing more than a worthy rival, but these days the raider no longer hears the gentle murmur of the waves. He has left the waves behind. That's what he wished to do a long time ago when he first sought his contest with the White Horn. Now, all that remains is to face the night. Before I go, in case you missed it, I recently announced that I'm writing a book on Elden Ring's lore. It's called Lorebound, and essentially it's my YouTube channel in physical form. So if you'd like to own my interpretation of Elden Ring's lore, check out the announcement videos and consider pre-ordering. Thank you as always for the support. I'm very privileged to have it. I'll see you next time.